Tonight on The Proof Is Out There. Is this the first photo of Bigfoot ever taken?
We have a photo of a dead Bigfoot, so what happened to the body?
What made the Pentagon investigate this UFO sighting?
This video was shown to NASA for a really good reason.
Did a miracle preserve this nun's body?
When you see photos like these, it's hard not to believe in divine intervention.
And could this strange object solve the mystery of Flight MH370?
What if this was just one part of a much larger machine?
Around the globe are videos,
What are those things? It's moving.
photos, and sounds that defy explanation.
We don't know where they come from, who made them, or how they operate.
What are they?
Some sort of bizarre mutation.
What's exciting is nobody really knows.
Extraordinary claims need extraordinary proof.
I'm Tony Harris, and as a journalist for more than 30 years, I've followed the facts where they take me. Now I'm bringing that spirit of investigation to the world's strangest sounds and images. We'll analyze each one with top experts
It's a credible case, it's a credible video.
and pass a verdict on what it is.
This video was clearly faked.
The Proof starts now. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to The Proof Is Out There. If Bigfoot has been around for centuries, like Native American folklore suggests, then you'd think there would be some historic photos of the creature, even from as far back as the 1800s. Well, guess what we found? It's the 1890s in Western Canada. The Canadian Pacific Railway has recently become operational. Forestry and mining operations are booming, and the wild frontier is finally being tamed. Portable cameras have exploded onto the market, and it is believed one of them was used to snap this uncanny photo. This dated, grainy, black and white image appears to show what some interpret to be a dead Sasquatch lying face down in the snow.
The picture is very old. It was taken in 1894 in British Columbia, in a very unexplored part of Canada at the time. If this is a Sasquatch in the photograph, it would by far be the oldest picture of a Sasquatch in existence.
Reports of Sasquatch-like creatures or wild men stretch back centuries, possibly millennia. Barrickman recalls an early 18th century sighting also reported from Western Canada.
In 1811, an early explorer named David Thompson ran across very large footprints in the ground that he could distinguish from that of a bear. This guy literally lived in the woods. He would know a bear print. He turned to his indigenous guides who were with him, and they say, let's follow this thing. And they said, no, man, we're not following that.
The indigenous tribes of Western Canada were no strangers to these strange beasts and named them Saskets. That's believed to be the origin of the word Sasquatch. Early sightings of these northern Bigfoots were surprisingly plentiful.
This photograph was taken along the Yellowcrum River, which flows into the Bridge River, which flows into the Fraser River. And the Fraser River is the source of one of the older Sasquatch reports on record in the area. Employees of the Hudson's Bay Company encountered a group of Sasquatches up on a cliff that were throwing rocks down upon them in 1864.
In fact, it was this company that many believe was responsible for this photo. A strange text scrawled on its back indicates the date, location, and company name, along with a message.
Some of that information on the back says that this picture was stolen from the Hudson's Bay Company, and it was one of a series. The Hudson's Bay Company is Canada's oldest fur trading company, founded all the way back in 1670. They literally owned 40% of what is now present-day Canada, and they were essentially the de facto government in this particular area.
Many wonder why this photo was stolen, and if the Hudson's Bay Company may have been keeping more photos of this creature under lock and key.
There might be more photographs out there of whatever this thing is. Is this the first known photograph of a Sasquatch, and maybe even the first known Bigfoot cover-up?
Recently released files revealed there's been at least one FBI investigation into the possible existence of Bigfoot. These files were kept under wraps since the 1970s. So if our own government has been keeping evidence like this locked away, Is it really so unbelievable that the Hudson's Bay Company has been doing the same for Canada? Let's see what our experts think. First, photography expert Andrew McCarthy tries to determine if this is really an authentic photograph or some kind of hoax.
It's a little bit on the high contrast side, so a lot of details are actually lost, which isn't unusual for a photo of this time. There's no artifact suggesting anything was airbrushed in. This photo seems to be completely authentic.
Many people online have suggested that this could just be a shaggy dog of some kind. But biologist Floyd Hayes says the limb proportions rule it out as any potential canid. But we should note, Hayes thinks this creature looks small compared to Bigfoot's size and other reported sightings.
I'm not impressed with the size of this animal compared to the snowshoes. And to me, the arms don't look like they're particularly long. They don't seem to extend very far below the waist. I'm not seeing anything about the body size and shape that would distinguish it from being a human. Although it could be a young specimen of a Bigfoot.
The supposed involvement of the Hudson's Bay Company, which may have secreted away other photos, has many believing this could be part of some kind of Bigfoot cover-up. But Hayes is skeptical.
The business of the Hudson's Bay Company was to go out and collect furs and make a profit. So it seems strange that a company wasn't motivated to collect the fur and preserve it, especially if it was an unknown creature to science.
However, that still doesn't explain why the company would keep photos of this curiosity under lock and key, unless there was something truly unique about this specimen, something they weren't ready to share with the rest of the world.
Apparently some other photos were taken, and perhaps those other photos may reveal the answers to the mystery.
Our verdict? We're calling this one a potential Bigfoot. There is certainly a lot that's suspicious about this photo, and while there may be some issues with the creature's size, we know the photo is real, and our experts haven't ruled out the possibility that it could be a younger, smaller Sasquatch. But until the rest of those mystery photos surface, we may never know for sure. Now, let's talk about something much more recent. In May 2023, NASA held its first public meeting on UFOs. One of the videos presented certainly grabbed our attention, not only for what the government would reveal about it, but what they wouldn't. 2021, an undisclosed military range in the western United States. A P-3 surveillance aircraft is in the midst of a training mission when its infrared sensors begin jittering. Soon, the flight crew sees why. Before them, 3 unidentified objects appear on their cameras flying equidistant and on the same flight line. At times, they resemble moving stars traveling westward. At other times, the UAPs morph into dotted lines. The trio's movement appears unaffected by a 4th object that whizzes by below them, flying in the opposite direction. Journalist MJ Banias says this video was released and discussed publicly by the leaders of AARO, the government body set up to investigate what it calls unidentified aerial phenomena.
AARO stands for the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. And according to its former head, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, only about 2 to 5% of those reported cases end up being categorized as anomalous.
The majority of unidentified objects reported to AARO and in our holdings demonstrate mundane characteristics of readily explainable sources.
Dr. Kirkpatrick stated that the aircraft in question that was recording these objects was not able to intercept them.
But given that this video was shot by a P-3 Orion surveillance plane, we know there is much more data yet to be disclosed.
It's equipped with incredibly high-resolution infrared cameras and is designed for intelligence gathering. This aircraft is able to collect significant telemetry and data and visual data on any given target within its search radius.
But whether or not the P-3 was dispatched to specifically track these objects, that's unknown. Now, can we glean anything from where this video took place? Well, all we were told during the hearing is that this video was taken on a training mission in the western United States. But with more than 30 bases in California alone, that's not a lot to go on. So we're calling on our experts to get to the bottom of this. We start our analysis with astrophotographer Andrew McCarthy, who spots a clue in the video immediately.
There is one object I can definitely explain. On the bottom, you do see an object streak by that has a definitive contrail. That fits the profile of a plane, so that's most likely one of our own aircraft in the sky.
But what about the other three objects, seemingly moving in unison and without contrails?
My gut initially tells me that these might be satellites. Starlink trains are becoming more and more common in the night sky as these satellites are deployed to low Earth orbit.
Starlink is Elon Musk's network of satellites that can provide internet access anywhere on the Earth. They are launched in groups and travel as a train until they reach their operating altitude and separate.
And when they're in lower altitude, just after sunset, they shine brightly against the horizon. So you'd actually see something very similar to this.
But aviation expert Tim McMillan disagrees.
When you think of Starlink satellite, you would see as a series of a string of dots across the sky, because Starlink is a satellite chain. It looks like just a string of dots coming across here. We don't see that here.
Instead, McMillan believes the same object McCarthy saw closer to the camera is the key.
If you look towards the bottom, you can see another point of light that resembles the other three lights. We actually can see evidence of an exhaust trail or contrail, very consistent with an airplane. That leads me to believe that what we're looking at here are likewise also airplanes. However, the one that passed in front of the camera where we were able to see the contrail was just closer to the Orion filming it.
In fact, McMillan believes Arrow wanted this footage released to the public, specifically to pour some cold water on the heated topic of UAPs.
These are definitely distant commercial airplanes. Frankly, I think this video was intentionally released to give people an idea of how aircraft could be misinterpreted as UFOs or UAP by the Department of Defense. I absolutely do not believe that the Department of Defense ever thought these were unidentified aerial phenomena.
Our verdict? We're going with planes in the distance. It turns out the team at Arrow also came to that same conclusion. Although we have to admit, it is strange they appear to be flying in unison. But hey, Arrow, next time you've got a video that can't be explained, be sure to come to us. Miracles, by their very nature, are rare, and we generally conceive of them as happening in times gone by. So when we heard reports of a potential miracle right here and right now in the USA, we couldn't help but investigate. April 2023, Gower, Missouri. It's been 4 years since the death of Sister Wilhelmina Lancaster, who founded the Benedictine Sisters of Mary, Queen of the Apostles. To honor her as a founder, the Sisters of the Order decide to transfer her remains inside to the monastery chapel. When they open the wooden casket to reinter her body, they expect skeletal remains. What they find, however, inspires millions. What you're seeing, believe it or not, is the shockingly well-preserved body of Sister Wilhelmina, 4 years after she died. Catholic miracle researcher Michael O'Neill says her story has gone global.
This is a big-time story. This was featured in the New York Times and other places all around the world because we have the case of possibly the very first American in history whose body was said to be incorrupt. Some saints throughout Christian history have exhibited this phenomenon where their body does not decompose.
So what can possibly be behind this remarkable state of preservation?
It's been somewhat of a tradition considered in the Catholic Church that those people whose bodies do not show the signs of decay are actually blessed by God in such a way that their holiness is being indicated from heaven.
Journalist Aaron McCarthy says one of the most legendary examples of incorruptibility is Saint Bernadette. A scientific investigation of her body was performed in the 1920s, more than 4 decades after her death.
She was actually dissected, and the person who dissected her said that her muscles were still firm and supple, and that her liver was also soft and pliant, which is not what you would expect for a corpse that had been in the ground for 46 years.
Yet, there are those who point to the deterioration of Sister Wilhelmina's hands as evidence that this is not a true case of divine intervention. Still, can a miracle be ruled out?
When people talk about incorruptibility, there's this idea that the entire body is in a state of perfect preservation. But traditionally, that's not how it works. Some saints are incorrupt in just one part, their heart or their tongue, for example.
Following her exhumation, Sister Wilhelmina has been put on display, but will she join other incorruptible saints?
The local bishop has suggested that people do not get too close to the body and do not venerate it as they would a saint, because further investigation needs to take place.
Even though Sister Wilhelmina's status as a saint is still up in the air, an estimated 25,000 people came to visit her body a month after she was exhumed. What can explain this phenomenon that has people making pilgrimages to rural Missouri? First, O'Neill looks into how Sister Wilhelmina's body was handled after her death.
There are people who say that some embalming or preservatives might have had to have been applied, but the sisters have denied this. And more importantly, all the scientists who have examined it have said there's no artificial preservation at all.
So could this have happened naturally? Dr. Ed Hope claims that there are certain environmental conditions that can lead to a body being preserved for hundreds or even thousands of years. For example, when the 2,000-year-old Tolland man was discovered in Denmark in 1950, they could still make out the individual wrinkles on his face.
The reason he was so well preserved was that he was discovered in a bog, an environment which would have very little oxygen, have a very low temperature, and a very acidic environment. Therefore, this would restrict the growth of bacteria, and bacteria are key in one of the main processes of decomposition.
So could these sorts of conditions explain what's happening in the case of Sister Wilhelmina?
What is strange in this case is her coffin actually had a hole in it, which you'd think the outside environment coming in would encourage bacteria, encourage insects to break down, to increase the decomposition process. But actually, it seems like the opposite has happened. One thing that was fairly unique when the body was exhumed was that mold was found inside the coffin. Now, ordinarily, you'd think that would lead to an increase in the rate of decomposition. But actually, given the fact that clearly hasn't happened, perhaps the mold has actually slowed the rate of bacterial growth by being competitive for the oxygen and nutrients in the coffin.
So this may just be one of nature's miracles, or to many, one that's divine. Either way, for millions, the symbolism is more important than some official decree.
Whether or not this is formally established by the Catholic Church as an authentic case of incorruptibility, or whether or not she's actually ever declared a saint, we know that so many people came together to experience this incredible event, which some call a miracle.
Our verdict, potential miracle. Why? There's no natural, easy explanation here. Dr. Hope's mole theory is interesting, but not conclusive. And the Catholic Church hasn't made a determination. What we do know, though, is that Sister Wilhelmina's story has brought hope and wonder to people all over the country. Father and son hikes can lead to bonding moments that last forever. But this particular hike led to a terrifying moment that nobody can forget. 1978, Morris Township, Pennsylvania. It's a crisp fall day, and 10-year-old Daniel Adams is hiking through the woods with his father, trying to find the source of strange sounds they've been hearing on their property.
We could hear this thing growling, and my dad told me to stay there, that he was going to walk down and see what this was.
The duo has brought along a tape recorder and managed to capture this chilling audio. We hear a horrible howling made by a dog, followed by a guttural growling made by something else, something unknown. Take another listen as we've isolated these sounds through our audio filter. Although he says the recordings don't do the sounds justice, over 40 years later, Daniel still remembers this frightening encounter vividly.
This roar shook the ground. It was 200 yards away, and I felt it like a bass speaker in your chest. And I know that was no fair. There ain't no bear that can do that.
Shortly after this recording was captured, Daniel says they heard whatever it was fighting with a neighbor's dog, presumably the dog they thought they heard in the recording. And that was the last time the dog was heard from again. A detail some researchers think supports the idea that the mystery creature is a Sasquatch, which they say is no vegan.
Being a Sasquatch, you're an omnivore. Everything's on the menu, man. In fact, I know of one homestead in Wisconsin. They had about 9 or 12 cats, but they noticed the numbers slowly dwindling over a month or two, and that was a Sasquatch predating on the cats. From Fido to Fluffy, everything is a meal if you're a Sasquatch.
And if that's true, then why aren't Sasquatches also going after people?
There are a small number of Sasquatch reports of them going after humans as a food item, but generally they don't want anything to do with us. Any Sasquatch of adult age has probably observed human hunters. They can't like the rifles or the noises that they make.
That kind of makes sense. Studies show other large creatures like bears are normally shy, retiring animals that have very little desire to interact with humans. On the other hand, they compete directly for food with canines like wolves. Could the same be true of Bigfoot? And could that explain what we're hearing on Daniel's recording? We turn to our experts to investigate. Forensic audio analyst Dr. Rob Maher confirmed the recording is authentic, then compared it to a recording of a black bear native to this area.
The bear sounds have much more of a low-frequency quality to them. It's more of a grunt sound that the bear makes. But the low-frequency grunt qualities here is not something that we see in the Pennsylvania recording.
Humans have a vast vocal range. Could this be a person?
Although humans can make sounds that are very similar to perhaps a wolf or a coyote, the characteristics in the Pennsylvania recording don't match up with this type of a sound.
We also asked Maher to compare this to the Sierra Sounds, a famous set of alleged California Sasquatch recordings from the 1970s. How do these match up?
There's an upward sound and then a little bit of a kicker to that sound that goes in there that is not what we hear in the Pennsylvania sounds. They have more of a shriek or a growl sort of quality than what we would attribute to the Sierra Sounds.
Still, Professor of Anatomy and Anthropology, Dr. Jeff Meldrum thinks this recording could be legitimate, since the vocal repertoire attributed to Sasquatch is extensive and varied.
There were a couple of little high-pitch inflections that were more indicative of some kind of a call that is not out of character with some recordings that have been attributed to Sasquatch.
Our verdict? Our experts are calling this an unknown animal sound, but they can't identify what exactly made these grunts in the 1970s. However, we do know Sasquatch sightings in the area continue today. We've explored theories that UFOs are drawn to certain features of human civilization. Nuclear facilities, combat zones, even cultural celebrations like the 4th of July. But some people also think UFOs might be interested in our infrastructure, like the electrical grid, and that this might be the video that proves it. 7:43 on August 16, 2023. It's a clear summer evening, and Gary McHatton is walking his dog outside his home in Nashville, Tennessee. He suddenly spots something out of the ordinary shimmering in the air, so he quickly pulls out his phone to capture this. A mysterious bright object appears to hover between two sets of power lines, Zooming in for a closer look, we see what appears to be an oblong craft with a small point protruding both above and below it, like a division sign. Whatever it is, it's grabbed the attention of writer Amy Title.
What's interesting about this video is whatever this object is, it's hard to tell whether it's white and reflecting light, whether it's metallic, or whether it's illuminated or emitting some kind of glow on its own.
Could it be the power lines drawing in this UFO? The McMinnville photographs, some of the most famous of all time, also showed a saucer-like object flying near a set of power lines near an Oregon farm in 1950. And Title notes other sightings connected to our use of electricity.
Some wonder whether UFOs might be attracted to the electric fields generated by these power lines. And others point to a link between UFOs and electrical power plants.
Case in point, an eerie incident that occurred on the East Coast back in November of 1965.
In New York State, portions of 6 neighboring states and parts of Canada were all plunged into a blackout. Numerous eyewitnesses reported seeing lights in the sky.
One newspaper reported that moments before the blackout, people saw a strange red ball hanging over the Sir Adam Beck power plant in Ontario.
Some wonder whether aliens were responsible for the blackout. There are also reports eyewitnesses saw them going into or leaving the scene.
At the time, it was reported even a University of Arizona physicist believed the '65 blackout could have been caused by UFOs. But is this footage proof of some sort of connection between aliens and electricity? We bring in our experts to illuminate this case. First, we hand the footage to astronomer and visual effects artist Mark D'Antonio.
This does not have to be faked. This looks like, to me, like real footage. I didn't see any evidence of manipulation. Now, the witness is moving around a little bit, but besides that, this is just a straight, short clip.
So what about the notion that this craft might be seeking energy from the power lines? D'Antonio explains while it may look that way, in fact, the proximity is just an optical illusion.
It's moving along at a not too fast speed, but the movement is related to the fact that this thing is moving in the sky, and the wires are just in the way between us and that object. Based on where we see the power lines, this object here could be somewhere around 34 to 36,000 feet.
So if we're looking at something thousands of feet in the air, could it be a drone?
We know that we have drones that can fly this high with capabilities that are really quite astonishing.
But D'Antonio says not so fast.
It might have characteristics of a military drone, but those drones also have a certain body type and body shape and profile. Military drones tend to be slender in the center and have very, very long wings. This image right here, it just seems to be too big to be a military drone in terms of its bulk.
Instead, military aviation expert Tim McMillan believes there are other clues that successfully solve the mystery.
At first glance, it doesn't appear to be a plane, but there's a couple of things that lead me in that direction. The video was filmed within close proximity to the Nashville International Airport. It even helps explain exactly why we see this elongated object and some slight, subtle protrusions.
Those protruding red dots on top and bottom of what looks like a division sign, it's not alien tech. McMillan says they're wings. In fact, he goes one step further.
I think the bright white fuselages and the wings and tail section of the aircraft looks like it's painted red.
For McMillan, the vibrant paint job is the final giveaway that ultimately identifies which flight this is.
Looking at the flight data, we find that there was a commercial aircraft in that area exactly when this video was filmed. It was a Sunwing commercial airliner flying from Cancun to Toronto, which has a color scheme where the wings of the aircraft are red and the tail section is red with a big white fuselage.
Talk about some good sleuthing. Our verdict, this is a regular airplane that gives the illusion of being a strange object near those power lines. I hope you're not shocked. Metal detecting in Australia can really pay off. In late 2022, one man even found a hunk of gold worth 6 figures with one of these things. However, more recently, beachcombers came across another metal object that washed up on shore. It was less shiny than gold, but more intriguing. Take a look. July 16th, 2023, Greenhead, Australia. Police are called to the beach to investigate an unusual object that has washed ashore. When they arrive, what they find is much weirder and larger than anything they ever expected. A huge, gold-colored metallic cylinder sits on the sand. It's about 8 feet wide and nearly 10 feet long. The top looks worn and scratched in a crossed pattern. The bottom portion is smooth, with seaweed and barnacles clinging to it farther down. Journalist MJ Benayes says some folks online believed the object came from out of this world.
There are some people who think that this object is extraterrestrial in nature. And a lot of their beliefs really pertain to the fact that it just does look a little outer spacey.
But as word spread of the mysterious object, another theory surfaced that it could be connected to one of the biggest aviation mysteries of all time, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370.
March 2014, the Beijing-bound flight heads out over the South China Sea, along with its 239 passengers. It was tracked for a couple hours, but then all of a sudden, everyone loses contact with it.
After 4 years, official searches for the flight ended on May 29th, 2018.
The mystery of what happened to MH370 is sort of like a modern myth. So one question that arose when this washed up on the beach was, is this object from that downed flight? And does it answer the question of what happened to MH370?
Only some pieces of MH370 have been found. The recovery effort became one of the most expensive in the history of aviation, costing about $150 million US. And in March 2024, it was reported the Malaysian government might renew the search for the missing plane. Could this be a piece of that fateful flight? Or is it some sort of unknown technology altogether? Our experts hop down under for some answers. Military aviation expert Tim McMillan addresses the UFO theory.
There's a lot of little things that would tell me this is not an alien spacecraft. The top of the object appears to have some type of fiberglass composite. That's very consistent with something that's designed to withstand extreme heat. You also see other riveting bolts. All of this is human man-made manufacturing techniques.
So is it from a plane? Could this object have come from the mysterious flight MH370?
It's not outside the realm of possibility that perhaps this could be a component to that missing aircraft. However, MH370 has been lost over 9 years. Any components of that aircraft that have been submerged in the ocean for that length of time, you would expect to see significant corrosion and much more marine growth. I would speculate this is an object that's been submerged in salt water in the ocean for likely a couple of months.
So perhaps it's not MH370, but could it be a different aircraft? McMillan isn't so sure.
It's larger than what I would expect most aircraft parts. And we don't see any windows. I think it's definitely not any type of conventional aircraft.
So it's not a plane, and it's not alien in nature. According to Rich Hoffman from the Scientific Coalition of UAP Studies, that leaves one prime suspect: space junk.
There's striations or lines up here that do cross hatches. That fibrous kind of like texture of that is something you see on a spacecraft. And to me, it looks like a fuel cell from polar satellite launch vehicles.
A polar satellite launch vehicle, or PSLV for short, is a 4-stage rocket used for carrying satellites into orbit. Sure enough, Hoffman did some digging and learned the official story.
In talking with the Indian Space Research Organization, it matches their polar satellite launch vehicles that they send in orbit, and this is actually a fuel cell from one of their launched rockets. This is a case where the actual fuel cell has now come down to the Earth and washed up on the shore.
Our verdict, this is part of an Indian PSLV rocket. And according to records, one such rocket was launched from Sriharikota, India on April 22nd, less than 3 months before the mystery object washed ashore. As for the mystery of MH370, we hope to have a solution to that soon. In the spring of 2023, Prince Charles was crowned king after the 70-year rule of Queen Elizabeth II. Inside Westminster Abbey, where the coronation happened, all eyes were on King Charles. But outside, something else was stealing the spotlight. May 6th, 2023, tens of thousands of well-wishers gather in London to watch the coronation of King Charles III. Photographer Simon Balson is positioned on the 13th floor of his apartment building to photograph the Red Arrows. They're the Royal Air Force's acrobatic team. They're planning a dramatic flyby over Buckingham Palace. As the jets come thundering by, Simon gets his shot. But it's not until later that he realizes he's also captured this. A small object floats above the flight team as they race by in a V formation. Zooming in, writer Aaron McCarthy says we see what appears to be an acorn-shaped object with a bright red top and darker bottom.
This object seems to be hovering over the plains. It doesn't look like any aircraft I've ever seen before. After the photographer noticed this bizarre object in his photographs, this went viral on the internet.
An unidentified flying object crashing King Charles's coronation? It may not be so strange. The royal family, and specifically Charles's father, Philip, have long been interested in UFOs, and the feeling may be mutual.
It's been rumored Prince Philip apparently had a huge interest in UFOs, dating back to a report filed by his uncle, Lord Mountbatten. In the 1950s, workers at the Broadlands estate, which belonged to Lord Louis Mountbatten, reported a flying saucer that seemed to be investigating the property, which was a big concern for the royal family because they spent a lot of time there.
Ever since, it's been noted that Philip became devoted to exploring the possibility of extraterrestrial life.
Prince Philip was said to have a whole library of books devoted to UFOs, and he was also apparently a subscriber to the Flying Saucer Review.
For years, the UK's Ministry of Defense investigated UFOs until the program was axed in 2009 due to budget cuts. But is this really a UFO or something more down to earth? I have my suspicions. Let's ask the experts. First, is the object supposed to be there? Could it be another aerial part of the celebration along with the Red Arrows? Some have speculated it could be some kind of stealth aircraft. But hang on.
A flying wing aircraft, think the B-2 stealth bomber or the F-117 Nighthawk. But there's nothing that I see from this photo that leads me to believe that there's anything like that. Certainly just from the size and shape, nothing that resembles that.
In fact, McMillan is convinced it's not an airplane at all.
If you look closely, there's no wings, there's no propellers, there's not a fuselage, there's not a tail section. There's absolutely no characteristics that resemble an airplane. I think you can kind of interpret based on the photograph. The size of it is pretty small, much smaller than the jets. If I had to speculate, 2-3 feet in diameter, something of that nature. So this is not a large object.
A 2 to 3 foot long object that flies? Sounds like it could be a drone to us. And we have seen drones that don't look like your average quadcopter. Could we be looking at one now? Let's take that question to astronomer and video effects designer Mark D'Antonio.
I don't think so. I don't know any drones that are shaped like that. We would actually see the structure of the drone, and we don't see that here.
This was photographed over the coronation of King Charles, so this is an area that's going to have restricted airspace anyway because of potential terrorist attacks or any kind of national security threat to the royal family, so you wouldn't have any other aircraft flying in that area. All we have here to go on is the photograph. Perhaps if we had a video and we saw this object darting around erratically or suddenly speed off at a great speed, that might cause me to pause and ask some questions. But from just the photo, I don't see anything that's really otherworldly.
If this was a UFO, do you think the organizers of this air show would allow or even be unaware that something like this was flying into their airspace? Absolutely not.
Ultimately, D'Antonio believes we're looking at something much more down to earth.
Now that shape looks like a heart, doesn't it? And at the end here, you see there's like a little thing on the end here. Now this is a coronation. If you go to a coronation, you can imagine that there's probably street vendors that sell things like Mylar balloons.
And note the way the light hits the object's surface.
Even the kind of shimmery reflectiveness that we see here, I think it's a Mylar balloon that's probably gotten away from one of the spectators or attendees who's there to enjoy all the events for the coronation.
You can capture an ordinary object in an extraordinary way, and that's just what happened here.
Our verdict? We're going to have to go with our experts on this one. This object has all the hallmarks of a balloon. So we extend our salutations and respect to the royal family. We're not monarchists on this show, but long live the king. And that's our show for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. And remember to keep those cameras rolling.